You gotta watch yourself. Many of us are living out the lives of other people, living out their conclusions, living out of their consciousness.
If you don't know, now you know. It's true. Your friends, family, and loved ones will be the first ones to try and talk you out of greatness. When you're ready to do something and try something new, that's out of your comfort zone, that's out of your norm. It's always the one you're dating, the one you're married to, the one that's in your family, your friends in your immediate circle, that will always try and talk you out of doing something special and significant. God didn't bring us in the world to do what's convenient. God didn't bring us in this world to be regular. God didn't bring us in this world to do the things that make us comfortable. My faith in God allows me to walk into bold and uncomfortable doors without having fear and rejection, without having fear of the word no. Do you know how many people have had visions, ideas, and huge career moves that they were about to make, and they allowed the word no to stop them from changing the landscape of their life and their family lives? So many people are afraid of rejection and the word no. It is the saddest shit I've ever witnessed in my life. So I no longer have fear of rejection. I no longer have fear of the word no. I no longer give power to the word no. I could care less about you rejecting me, disowning me having visions and ideas and you not seeing what I see. I see what's not there. Only those that can see the invisible can do the impossible. I see what's not there. I have visions. My visions are bold and unapologetic. And if you don't get it when I show it to you, if you don't get it when I explain it, if you don't get it when I verbalize it and I go into details, guess what? It's your loss. Because guess what? These visions were God sent. And if visions are God sent, you don't ever give anybody the power over your visions. They don't belong to you. They were given to me from God. These visions were God sent. And if the visions are God sent, they don't belong to you. Nor can you take the energy or my beliefs out of the vision because you don't believe in the vision. Understand this, y'all. Don't be afraid to walk into the unfamiliar. Don't be afraid to do what's deep inside of you to do. If God was done with you, you wouldn't be here anymore. We've all lost friends and family and loved ones and homies that was innocent. For whatever reason, they're not here anymore. You're receiving this message because you're still alive and you're on Facebook. I'm telling you, stop being afraid of the unfamiliar. Boldly walk into the room with your head held up high. And if they don't get it, laugh about it. Don't disown your ideas because they're disowning your ideas. Don't lose confidence in your ideas because they don't have confidence in your ideas. Keep the faith, especially if your visions and ideas were God sent. He wouldn't have sent it to you if you wasn't supposed to be obedient to the vision and move on it. You got gifts, you got talents, you got capabilities, you got inventions, you got phone apps, you got all of these things that you need to unleash on the world. You don't have money, you may not have the financial resources, but don't allow your visions and ideas to be stifled because of what's in your bank account or not. When you have visions and ideas, you do any means necessary to get a hold of the investors and the people with all the money in the world who don't have your ideas to see to it that your ideas come to life.
You can't be distracted by things that are keeping you from your purpose. You don't have time to waste worried about what people think about you. Your time is too valuable to respond to every critic, every negative comment, try to convince people that you really are okay. Those are distractions. Everyone is not going to like you. Everyone's not going to accept you. Quit trying to convince someone to understand you that's determined to misunderstand you. Some people don't want to be for you, and that's okay. You don't need them to fulfill your destiny. But the enemy would love for us to spend time and energy trying to win someone over that's never going to be won over. You have to set your face. The people that need to be for you will be for you. God has already lined up the right people. People that will celebrate you. People that will cheer you on. People that stick with you through thick and thin.
You know, one of the things that human beings underestimate dramatically is their capacity to get great at something if they're totally immersed in it, totally laser focused on something. But as I've coached the very high-end athletes in my life, the top business people and entertainers, I can tell you that most people underestimate what total obsessive laser focused really is and what it looks like, because you are way more powerful than you know you are if you went crazy, psycho, obsessed, laser focused on anything, even something you're totally ill-prepared for. Humans have an unreal capacity to get great at things, even if they don't have a natural talent for it, if they're immersed in it, and to learn something and acquire a ton of knowledge in a short period of time as well. In other words, this is what I want you to understand. When you're laser obsessed focused, your obsession distracts you from what you're currently doing, not the other way around. You're not really obsessed with it if you're easily distracted from it. This is so important. You right now can test whether it's your obsession with whether it distracts you constantly. The first thing you think of when you wake up, last thing before you go to bed. When you have a big laugh, it comes up. When you cry, it comes up. When you're watching TV, it comes up. When you're doing your regular job, but it's your side hustle, it comes up. You can't stop thinking about it. It distracts you from the rest of your life. That's what an obsession does. When it's not really your obsession, the rest of your life distracts you from it. And so the it in your life is so important. But there's all these things that distract us today. I'm going to give you a recommendation. Turn your damn TV off. Turn the radio off most of the time. Turn your phone off a lot too. So here's the deal. The TV's competing constantly to distract you with stuff that really doesn't matter. And I'm not saying, by the way, don't be informed, don't know what's going on in the world, because that makes you more interesting, right? You should know what's going on in the world. But let's be real. Does it really matter what's going on with the Kardashians right now? Does it really matter? They live on my street in one of my neighborhoods, right? And they're very nice people, but I gotta be honest with you. What happens in their life doesn't dramatically impact mine, but how many people are more obsessed with the Kardashians? And I can say this as good friends. We have many good friends in reality television. They're even listening to this right now, and they would tell you this. Don't be so obsessed with them. Be obsessed with your own reality TV program called Your Own Life, right? How about the news? All the time they're trying to distract us. Before it was Obama, now it's Trump. Trump's going crazy today. Obama was nuts about this. Healthcare, Iraq, Iran, North Korea, right? Like all these things. And most of these things don't impact our own lives. I'm not saying don't know about them, but it's such a convenient escape from the work. It's such a convenient escape from our obsessions. The left against the right, Republicans against Democrats. Who's going to be the next president? Who's going to get the Democratic nomination? Can they beat Trump, right? Who cares? Who cares right now? You got to win in your own life. It's like, when I say this, people say, well, that's not, a very professional, evolved opinion. I'm just telling you what it takes to win. What it takes to win is not worrying about all that stuff. That should be the background noise. But talking about it, thinking about it, watching TV about it. Who cares what's going on in the real whatevers of anywhere? Who cares what the Kardashians are doing? Who cares who's running for office now? You say, well, wait a minute. Aren't you socially conscious? Here's all I know. I've been alive through many different presidents, Republican and Democrat. None of them changed my life. You winning in your life is what changes it. So tune out the distractions, will you please? Turn your TV off. Get focused in your own life. Invest those hours on podcasts like this that actually impact your life. Invest it on someone's social media like mine who's actually putting out messages about your life. And by the way, I say this as somebody who has many of these people on my show. Many of these people that you admire are friends of mine, as many of you know. There are things to learn from them. Absolutely, they're at the top of their craft. But I'm not deluded into thinking a top NBA player is any better a person than a top school teacher or a top nurse. I don't think a top politician is a superior human being over a top landscaper or a top banker or a top entrepreneur. I think the people at the top of everything, there's things to learn from. And guess what the people at the top of everything have in common? They're obsessed on their own lives, not other people's. Those athletes you admire didn't get there by worrying about your life, did they? And so tune out the distractions in our lives. Turn the TV off. Get some perspective. Get obsessed. Because we do it because it's an escape, because we don't have to look at ourselves. I'm challenging you to look at yourself. But they take your time. They divert your focus. Can you get obsessed on one thing? What other things divert our focus? The things in life that don't matter. Our own negative thoughts, our own insecurities, our own weaknesses. These distract us. Failure distracts us. Gossiping of other people distracts us. Talking about other people. Worrying about haters. Getting caught up in things that don't matter in our life. Drugs and alcohol distract us. There's all these things. When you start to pile them into life, what's your distraction? Just be honest. Is it living vicariously through your children? Is it living through them and their soccer team and their little league and their grades? Are you distracted by living through your children? Are you distracted by ESPN? Are you distracted by movies, Netflix, video games, gossip, haters, Fox News, CNN, right? Your problems. Are you distracted with things that don't matter in your life? There's all these things competing to get you to not be focused. How about your insecurities? How about your fears? How about your worries or your problems? Are you using all of these? Do you your relationship issues, does it distract you from your big goals? Do you let these things, do you almost willingly do it? Here's what I think. Most of us are willing participants in our own distraction. And we need to be willing participants in our own focus, in our own obsessions, and getting ourselves back on plan. Because remember what I told you, if you're really obsessed, the obsession will distract you from these things. But if you're not obsessed, these things will distract you from that thing. And this requires self-auditing on your part. And so that's the part one that I think steals more dreams than almost anything in life right now, is this obsession with distraction. It's the obsession with other people think about us. It's all of these things competing, except the one thing that matters, the one thing. But the best of the best, listen to me, the one thing dominates their life. The reason some of the athletes I work with have a hard time when they retire, can I be honest with you? Because they were so great at what they did, because they were so obsessed on that one thing. When that one thing is gone, they don't know what to do with themselves with all these distractions now. Because the best at everything don't live with distraction, they live with obsession and focus. I'm not saying don't be a complete person. But I'm saying for you to complete your journey towards maxing out, for you to completely max out your life, you must eliminate all of these things that take you by the wayside.
The biggest poison in us is regret.
Bad decisions, hasty decisions, too fast, and affects the next 20 years of your life because you made the wrong decision. What makes us make these fast decisions? Fear?
Let the fear of regret fuel you to take action today, now.
Be the best. Lifelong personal development requires tremendous dedication, discipline, and willpower. It is often the case that we know what we need to do, but we lack the courage to take the risks. Instead, we make excuses for inaction.
When people can walk away from you, let them walk. When people can walk away from you, let them walk.
The great thing about excuses is that no matter what happens, excuses are always there waiting to be used. But the downside of excuses is that nobody really believes them. If you make excuses, they're going to know it and they're going to think less of you. But if you refuse to rely on excuses, people are going to know that too, and they'll admire you for it.
You need large amounts of self-discipline to deal courageously with all the fear-inducing events of your life. Courage is rightly considered the foremost of the virtues, for upon it all others depend. Often, fear is necessary to preserve life, prevent injury, and guard against financial mistakes.
I don't want you to try to talk another person into staying with you, loving you, calling you, caring about you, coming to see you, staying attached to you. I mean, hang up the phone. When people can walk away from you, let them walk.
If you ask people what they regret, especially as they get older, what they generally report is things not done. So they don't regret so much mistakes they've made, although of course people obviously regret mistakes they've made as well. So they don't exactly regret sins of commission, right? Errors that they've actively made. They torment themselves for opportunities that had presented themselves that they did not, let's say, exploit or engage in.
The regret we feel for things that we've done, though intent, only lasts a short period of time. But the regret that we feel for things that we missed out on, that can extend throughout a lifetime. Because most of us are scared, and we choose to lead an easy life. And by doing so, we start to rack up those regrets. But there is a solution. You have to be willing to be bold.
You have a great life in front of you, but your great life is in front of you. It's not behind you. What you did back there ain't got nothing to do with what God got for you. What you did back there was learn the lessons to get you to where you are at this particular moment right here.
Bad decisions, hasty decisions, too fast, and affects the next 20 years of your life because you made the wrong decision. If you'd have just waited, got all your information together, settled yourself, you'd have been better. What makes us make these fast decisions? Fear?
It takes discipline to face your fears so you can conquer them. And that's what discipline is. Discipline means taking the hard road, the uphill road, to do what's right. And regret, in and of itself, it's worthless. So learn and move on.
There are moments that try the human soul so violently and so perplexing that if the truth were told, all of us have had moments that we wanted to throw up our hands and walk away. Particularly painful is discouragement in the life of the believer, because as we travel from season to season, it is not just the perils that we face, but it is seeing the wicked go forward while the righteous are held back. Discouragement can creep in secretly, hide behind clothes, makeup, hairdos. Discouragement is so bold that it will even hide behind a smile. It will always ride to work with you. And if it doesn't catch a ride going to work, it'll catch a ride on the way back home. Discouragement will go into a tent. It will walk right into a Section 8 neighborhood. But don't think that it stops. Discouragement will walk right into a middle-class house. It won't just stop there. It'll go in a mansion. And tell you life is not worth living. If you listen at discouragement, it will cause you to make bad decisions. It will cause you to think that life is not worth living. And secretly, behind the facade of a smile and a good morning and a praise the Lord and a how are you, you will wonder if you're ever going to get out of what you're into.
One of the things that we know about life is that it is always changing. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes you're happy, and sometimes you're sad. Now that's that thing called life. And when we begin to understand and know that, accepting that reality that we will never ever have things just on an even keel all the time, that you're going to have some ups and you're going to have some downs. But during those down moments, that's where the growth takes place. That's where the work is. Anybody can feel good when they have their health, their bills are paid, they have happy relationships, the children are acting normal, business is successful. Anybody could be positive then. Anybody can have faith under those kinds of circumstances. See, but the real challenge of growth, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, comes when you get knocked down. Adversity introduces a man to himself or a woman. How you handle it, that's where the growth takes place.
The ability to learn to say no and not to feel guilty about it, to me, is about the greatest success I have achieved. It's all a part of a process for growing for me. To me, to have the kind of internal strength and internal courage it takes to say, no, I will not let you treat me this way, is what success is all about. I will not be treated this way. I demand only the best for myself.
As you might imagine, I don't think we should spend a lot of time regretting the choices we've made in the past. To spend time brooding over how things went, that's an illusion. What you're doing is suffering pointlessly in the present under the shadow of certain memories. You're telling yourself a story about something that might have been over and over again. How long do you want to do that for?
And sometimes life is going to knock you down. But because you have been knocked down don't mean that you finish. No. You got some reasons. It might be your own sense of pride and determination in the kind of life that you want to create.
There are people in their 30s and 40s who are still acting like adolescents. And there are even people in their 40s and 50s who are still acting like babies as far as their attitude toward responsibility is concerned. But the large number of people who shirk responsibility can also provide opportunities for you if you are determined to be different. If you decide to be one of the few who embraces responsibility, you can lead, and you will deserve to lead. Churchill said responsibility is the price of greatness. And in my opinion, it's really a rather small price to pay. It means, first of all, that you accept the consequences of your actions. Responsibility means you look to yourself as the source of everything that happens to you. It means that you assume command, regardless of the hardships you may have undergone early in life, or the dozens of people who may have failed to understand you. I'm saying that regardless of the presence of those negative influences in your life, the best thing you can do, the strongest thing, the most empowering thing, and ultimately the wisest thing, is to accept responsibility for your own destiny, plain and simple.
If you have enough reasons, you can do the most incredible things. Here's what you might be lacking: a long enough list of reasons. Reasons that drive you, reasons that get you up a little extra early, reasons that keep you up a little extra late. That's what makes the difference.
You should always make decisions with your heart and soul. You can use your brain for math, but when it comes to the actual feel of the decision, you always want to go inward and check it against your heart and soul. Here's the simple test. Does the decision that you're about to make expand you, expand your future, or expand the possibilities of your life? If the answer is yes, then the decision is yes, no matter how terrifying it is.
Other than death, all failure is psychological. Other than death, all failure is psychological. Does not mean that you won't lose some battles, because you will. We all will. But it does mean that as long as you don't surrender, as long as you don't quit, then you haven't failed.
Here are some action exercises that you can do. Make a decision today to invest in yourself and getting better, as if your future depends on it, because it does. Identify the most important skills you have that determine the quality and quantity of results you get at your work, and make a plan to get better in each one. Set excellent performance in your work as a goal, and then determine exactly what you will need to do every day to join the top 20% or better in your field.
Sometimes I see people succeeding who didn't pray nearly as hard, work nearly as long, and it seems like they seemingly have moments of victory in close proximity so I could see it. Not while I am having a similar experience, but while all hell has broken loose in my life and I am going through agony and tragedy, seemingly they are having victory and triumph. And if you are not careful, the very sight of their prosperity becomes your agony. And seeing them go forward will be a source of such continued frustration that it is not your test that baffles you, but their success agonizingly displayed before you makes you despair of life, until David says in 37:1, fret not thyself over evildoers, how they prosper in their own way, they shall soon be cut off. He says, in other words, don't make a permanent decision over a temporary circumstance. He says, don't allow a moment of agony to make you draw a conclusion about life prematurely.
I was going through a major challenge in my life that was wearing me out, that was using me. And one of my students told me in a class that I was teaching, Lessons in Truth, she said, Les, until you handle it with grace, it will stay in your face. And it stayed there a long time. Are you going through it, or are you growing through it? Are you bigger and better because of it? Because it's not going to leave you until you grow through it. Are you learning anything, or are you doing it over and over and over again? Insanity is doing the same thing in the same way, expecting a different outcome. The biggest challenge is to know what's happening. This is a part of this thing we call life. This too shall pass. And maintaining perspective, putting it in perspective. How do we get stuck? A friend of mine working on a job, loved the company very much, expected to retire there. And one day they called him in the office, asked him for his badge and identification, told him he was fired and he had to leave then. He was devastated. And if you came anywhere near him, he would tell you his story, as we all have stories. Even when he got a job, he went on the job telling anybody who would listen how they fired him unjustly. And he always ended with, it wasn't fair. Life isn't fair. It's not fair that birds eat worms, and they do.
Don't deviate, don't procrastinate, don't become frustrated. All you have to do to win this battle is stay on track.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
I fought a good fight. I fought for my kids, and I fought for what was right, and I fought for my good health, and I fought for a good career that would bless my family. I fought a good fight. The encroachment, opposites are in conflict, and we're in the middle. And if you want something valuable, you got to fight for it.
You have comeback power when something happens to you. Don't buy into what has happened to you. Buy into, I'm getting up out of here. I'm going to change this situation. This does not work for me, and I don't have the luxury of being depressed. I need to clear my head.
Yes, we can see avoidance of responsibility all the time in both our personal and professional lives. We can see that most people aren't as successful as they wish they were. Do you see there's a connection between these two very common phenomena? I hope you'll understand that it's in your best interests to take responsibility for everything you do. But that's only the beginning. I'm also going to suggest that many times it's even best to accept responsibility for the mistakes of others, especially when you're in a managerial or leadership role.
What do you do when you tried and failed and you want to quit and you want to give up? Sometimes you can be blessed and be unhappy because even though things are going right, they're not going according to what you had believed and expected, and you know that something is missing out of your life.
You got to clear your head so that the decision that you make represents the best in you. Be still and know that you're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. You got to assure yourself. You have to encourage yourself. You have to clear your mind.
The great thing about excuses, and the really dangerous thing about them, is that no matter what happens, excuses are always there waiting to be used. But the downside of excuses, even good ones, is that nobody really believes them. If you make excuses, they're going to know it, and they're going to think less of you. But if you refuse to rely on excuses, people are going to know that too, and they'll admire you for it. This is especially true in business. One of the classic examples happened about 15 years ago. A widely advertised healthcare product from a leading manufacturer was shown to be unsafe, and the company responded by pulling every single box off the shelves at a cost of millions of dollars. Was the company destroyed? Hardly. If they had done anything else, there would have been a tremendous loss of confidence. Instead, there was honest acceptance of responsibility for a mistake. Contrast this with what happened recently to a leading manufacturer of computer chips. When a new microprocessor didn't perform up to expectations, the company made excuses. It was a minor problem, something that would crop up once in a lifetime, and so forth. Were these excuses valid? Maybe. Maybe not. But it doesn't really matter, does it? So many people use excuses, but nobody really buys them. That accepting responsibility is one of the highest forms of human maturity. To put yourself on the line, a willingness to be accountable, is really the defining characteristic of adulthood. Anyone who has raised children knows how true this is. Just look at a baby during the first few years of life. Every facial expression, every tentative word has one message for the baby's parents. I am totally dependent on you. I can't be held responsible for the consequences. I can't do anything for myself even if I try. After all, I'm just a baby. 10 or 12 years later, of course, as the boy or girl enters adolescence, this message to the parents will be very different. It will sound something like this: I want to be totally independent. Why don't you just leave me alone? I don't want to do anything but think about myself. I certainly don't want to accept any responsibility. It's only when we're at last grown up that the first two messages, I'm totally independent of you and I'm totally dependent on you, finally turn into you can depend on me, which is the truly adult outlook.
The night seasons are not the end. The bad breaks, the disappointments, that's simply another step on the way to your destiny.
But let me tell you what ought to cause great joy to come to your life is if you'd stop comparing yourself to other people and you would just remember where you came from and remember where you started. You're doing more, you're seeing more, you're achieving more. But if you start comparing yourself with someone else, you can get discouraged because they're doing more maybe than you're doing.
Sooner or later, all of us face situations in which we must decide whether to accept responsibility for a problem or look for ways to avoid responsibility. Let's look at the various options and decisions that are now open to you. First, there's the role played by intention. In other words, was the outcome of your action what you intended it to be? And if it was not, should you still accept responsibility for that outcome? This is a very serious issue in the way we think about responsibility. In many areas of criminal law, for instance, the intention to commit a crime must be present in order for the accused to be held criminally responsible. This intention is something quite different from mere negligence. But we don't have to enter a courtroom to see the important role intention plays in accepting responsibility ourselves or assigning it to others. Don't you remember when you were a kid and you left the screen door open so that the cat ran outside and was lost all afternoon? What did you say to avoid responsibility? You said, it was an accident. You said, I didn't mean to do that. As I pointed out earlier, there are lots of people who still use these childlike rationalizations well into their middle age. But if and when you decide you want to be an adult, you begin to see the whole question of intention as nothing more than another opportunity for excuse making, and you should refuse to participate in it.
If you get beat, unless you're dead, you are not defeated, and you have not failed. What you've done is you've learned. You've gained experience, and you're still alive. So get up and go get after it.
You can get discouraged a lot of ways, but the one surefire way to avoid discouragement, first of all, let's understand something. We're all participating in this thing called life, all of us. Life has ebb and flows, mountaintops, it's got valleys, it's got thunderstorms in it, earthquakes. This life, you stop expecting it to go smooth, because it ain't finna go smooth. The road to success is always under construction. This life ain't set up to be smooth. You combat negativity and you combat discouragement with gratitude. It's the one way to combat discouragement is with gratitude. What messes you up is you focus on the thing that's not happening, and that causes you to get discouraged. So whenever you get discouraged, you have to change your focus from what's not happening to what has happened. And it straightens you out immediately. Because what causes the downslide is if you get wrapped up into what ain't happening, it get ugly, man. And it just snowballs. But you have to focus on gratitude. People understand how serious gratitude is. You know, it's a serious principle of success. It's hard to be miserable and grateful at the same time. You know, I learned this at my mother's funeral, man, which was like the roughest. That week of my life was like chaotic, man. I thought I was gonna die. My mama passed, I was 40. I didn't do good, man. I thought I was crumbling. I really, man, I didn't know what that was, man. The most important person to me was gone. I was crushed. I thought I was gonna die. And at the funeral, my mother was a Sunday school teacher for 40 years. And I'm devastated. My mother's in a casket. That's just not the picture I ever wanted to see, right? And I was struggling with her being up there. And the preacher stood up and he said, I know y'all hurting. I got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. He said, but I want y'all to look around at this church. My mama had been a Sunday school teacher for 40 years. Church was packed. It was packed. He said, the overflow room is full. He said, we've put up projector screens in the parking lot. We don't do that on Easter. We done set up projector screens in the parking lot because so many people then came to see your mother off. Said, because your mother meant something to everybody. My mama's funeral was filled with the hood, the gangsters, the pimps, the hustlers, the dope boys, the police, the politicians, church people. He started talking about, he said, look how full this church is. Look at the lives she touched. Look what she meant to so many people. We got people in this church we ain't seen in years. He said, look at this. And I want you to think of all the incredible things your mother has ever done. And then he started listing the things she had done around the church and what people had said about her. And we started smiling. And this was the first time I had smiled in a week. That week was ugly for me. And he said, now listen to this. You see the smiles on your face? He said, joy and depression cannot reside in the same space. So when you get down and you start thinking about how dark it is, I want you to remember everything your mother taught you that was good. And that replaced all the negative thoughts I was having. Because joy and depression cannot reside in the same space. Well, now you got to take that concept and apply it to your life. If joy and depression cannot reside in the same place, when you get depressed and you get discouraged, you got to replace it with joy. And what more joyous than gratitude? What has God done for you? Didn't you wake up today? Ain't you still breathing? Don't you have some measure of health? Ain't you working? You may not have the car you want, but don't you have a car? Ain't you eating groceries today? You ain't homeless. Now, when you start tripping and you get depressed, you got to go into yourself and come up with some gratitude.
Mr. Bennett continues, if one cannot arrange that an income of 24 hours shall exactly cover all proper items of expenditure, one does muddle one's whole life indefinitely. We shall never have any more time. We have, and we have always had, all the time there is. Isn't that well said? Let's consider some approaches to managing our time most effectively. The first approach is to ignore the subject altogether. The man says, I've been late all my life. I can't ever seem to get a handle on my time. Heck with it. I'll just struggle along the best I can. That's okay. It's your life, right? You can do with it as you please. But consider what this attitude might be costing you. Here's the second approach. Step down to something easier. Again, that's okay too. A man works for a company, then decides he wants to own one. When he gets that responsibility, comes to work before everyone else, leaves after everyone else, he now says, I would rather work for someone else's company. Hey, again, it's your life. Success is not a stereotype. There isn't just one model. Know clearly what success means to you and be comfortable with the price you pay for it. You might have heard the story of the little girl who complained to her mother that her daddy never had time to play with her. She said, why doesn't my daddy play with me? He comes home from work, goes to the study and work, comes out for dinner, goes back to work again. I want to play with my daddy. So her mother explained to her, your daddy is very busy. He loves you very much, and that is why he works so hard. At his office, he has so much work to do that he has to bring the rest of it home and finish it here. That is why he can't play with you. The little girl thought for a moment, trying to solve this problem, and came up with the answer. She said, well, why don't they just put him in a slower group? Hey, not a bad idea. Don't throw away other important values in your life just going for one. I went for some things in my life and found out later I had paid too much. If I had known how much they were going to cost, I never would have paid. So that is a consideration. The next approach to time management is to work longer and harder. And we all know the dangers there, right? Unless you aren't working at all, then you probably need to work longer and harder. But for some people, if 10 hours won't do it in a day, they work 12. And if 12 won't do, they move it up to 14. Some people even take on 2 jobs. And there are some very real dangers here, not least of which is health problems that result from not being able to handle the stress. So you've got to be careful with this approach. The last approach I think is the best, and that is to get more out of you. In the time you have assigned to labor, make the hours more valuable. The key is not to work harder, but to work smarter. If you're putting in about 8 or 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, that's about it. You can't work much harder. But remember, it's not the hours you put in that count. It's what you put in the hours. Get more from you to make the investment of time more valuable. And no telling how valuable you can become. We don't lack the capacity, we only lack the ideas and the will and the discipline to carry them out. In considering the subject of time management, remember that a big part of the key for changing is to take it in small steps. Most of us don't make revolutionary changes. We change a few degrees at a time. When you get some life momentum rolling, it's not that easy to make all the changes all at once. Hey, you can't whip a U-turn with the Queen Elizabeth II. When that big ship gets moving, they say it takes 7 miles just to get it stopped. So when it's really moving, you just have to nudge it a little, and finally you get it turned. That's a lot like our lives, a few nudges at a time.
How many of you know that it's hard building a thriving residual income on a monthly basis? Raise your hands. That's why most people won't say yeah. It's much easier to complain about the economy. It's much easier to complain about our elected officials. If much easier to talk about the recession. That's much easier to come up with excuses why you can't do it. That's where I was. That's where I set up station for a long time. My mentor said something to me, Mike, wait, I want you to write this down. He said, anybody can complain. He said, if you do what is easy, that's complaining. If you do what is easy, your life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. Come on, that's strong medicine. If you do what is easy, complain about your situation, your circumstance. If you do what is easy, stand around and be a volunteer victim like everybody else. If you do what is easy, surrender and give up on your dreams. Become depressed and bitter and angry. Anybody can do that. If you do what is easy, your life be hard. But if you do what is hard, keep coming back again and again and again. If you do what is hard, approaching strangers, talking to people in shopping malls, get up dressed every day, going out prospecting, knowing some way, somehow, with a spirit of expectation, somebody's out here looking for an opportunity. You can go outside right now and see some pigeons, but you're out hunting for eagles, and they're not common. And if you do that over and over and over again, somebody's going to show up. Somebody's going to say, I'm the one. Dr. Thurman, I love him so. What a great. He said there's something in each and every one of them that waits and listens to the voice of the genuine in yourself. It will be perhaps the only guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, all of your life, your days will be spent on the ends of string that somebody else pulls. And I submit to you, you invested time and money, go to the airport, fly across country. I suggest to you, some of you drove here. I suggest you showed up because you said, I'm going to pull my own strings. I'm going to control my own life. Nobody will ever pull my strings again. Give yourselves a round of applause. I want you to write this down. Choosing your future. It's a program that we've created that's designed to put in place for you to work on yourself. A systematic process that changes your mindset. It's possible, it's necessary, it's you, it's hard, it's worth it, it's done. It's 6 CDs.
I'm tired, y'all. I'm tired of shortcuts. I'm tired of 15-year-olds being killed in drive-by shootings. I'm tired of 3-year-olds getting shot through a door in our own house plan because we won't talk about life. Somebody has got to have the courage to talk about life that is not just a straight line and everything that just fall into place. And Peter, the great apostle of the New Testament, is warming himself by the fire of the Romans, denying Jesus, and not just saying I'm not his disciple. He said, I don't even know him. It's a shame, but it's true. And what of Thomas? Thomas, who said, we must go and die with him. Where is he? Where is Thomas? Not in the upper room later when Jesus rose from the dead. Where is he at the cross? Because when Jesus left for Jerusalem, Thomas said, look it up, I must go and die with him. But when that dying got real, a lot of people say a lot of stuff until it gets real. For better or for worse, in sickness and in health, to richer and for poor, till you pee on yourself. When it gets worse, don't be so carried away about what people say, because Thomas, who was ready to die for him, turns up MIA at the cross. I see John, I see Mary, I see the Roman soldiers. Where is Thomas at the cross? No wonder he doesn't show up in the upper room. Shame. No wonder he is not gathering with the rest of the disciples, because they heard him say, I will die with him. And they know he had shrank into the bushes and ran down the path and went over the hill and swam across the creek to get away from death. And what about Judas and his infamous betrayal of Jesus? I was reading a non-canonical book called The Gospel of Judas that has been discovered in the antiquities of history. And in it purports the ideology that Judas really wasn't trying to betray Jesus. He was trying to put Jesus in a situation where he would have to overthrow Rome so that the kingdom could come. And he thought that if he got Jesus in an open confrontation with Rome, Rome, that Jesus would show his power and rise to power, and he would finally take on politics and stop healing sick people. Because I'm tired of you healing sick people. That's not why I'm following you. I'm following you because I want political power. And the trick blew up in his face, and he didn't know they were going to kill him. If he knew they were going to kill him, then why did he hang himself? He hung himself because he got caught in his own web, and it cost somebody their life. And some of us have made decisions that cost other people their lives and their careers and their futures. And it's hard to live when you got the masterful plot and the plot goes wrong. Can I go deeper? I want to submit, just for your curiosity, it could be possible that had Judas not hung himself, he could have got the same. He could have come and fallen on his knees and said, forgive me. And I know you don't believe it, but I will defend it. If Jesus could be dying on the cross and say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, while they nailed him to the tree, then surely